the UFC has made a grave mistake. They accidentally put on a good card. So, full card predictions: UFC 314, Volkanovski, Lopes, starting from the bottom, going to the top. All right, early prelims. Oh, excuse my voice. I have a fucking sore throat and a canker sore. So, if I'm misspeaking or if you hear me drinking water, that is why. All right, first fight of the card: Nora Cornolle versus Hailey Cowan. How you pronounce it? No one cares about this fight. I'm picking Nora Cornolle. She beat Jocelyn Edwards, who's pretty solid. Finished Melissa Tanya Mullins, who was a good prospect at the time. Has looked good since then. And then had a really close fight with Jacqueline Cavalcanti, who's actually a pretty solid fighter. So I think both Melissa Tanya Mullins and Jacqueline Cavalcanti know how to throw a punch, and that's like, puts him in the top 20% of women's MMA fighters. And then Hailey Cowan hasn't won in almost 3 years. She pulled out of her last two fights she had scheduled with injuries, and her last win was a split decision win over Claudia Lett, who isn't good. So Nora Cornolle, I think, is much better. So yeah, I'm gonna pick her to win. She's only a slight favorite. I don't know why. I guess she's a little smaller. I don't know. Maybe at a worse gym, older, whatever. Better fighter. She's actually minus 200. I thought it was closer, so I don't hate that. Next fight up the card: Marco Tulio versus Tresean Gore. Now, Tresean Gore, I talked about this last week, and I think I talked about it the week before then. How it seems like every week there's a UFC card where I'm just like, is this guy the worst fighter in the UFC? And even though it's pay-per-view, I think I'm thinking that again. Now, Tresean Gore, probably not the worst in the UFC, but he's got to be like bottom 7, maybe. I think Antonio Tricoli is worse, and so is Josh Fremd, who he beat his most 2 recent wins. But I would say that Tricoli is probably number 1 worst fighter in the UFC, and Fremd is probably like number 5 worst fighter in the UFC as far as the men go. So yeah, not very good for those being your only UFC wins. He I don't know why I wrote this. He unironically got finished by Barnage. He got finished by Barnage. Barnage isn't good. He's probably also in the bottom 10 worst fighters in the UFC. And he had a split decision with Prince Ellerby. It was his Pro MMA debut, but this is his 8th fight, so it was only a couple years ago. And Prince Ellerby was also his debut, and he went on to retire 1-3. So not a very good win. And Marco Tulio looked really good, fought pretty recently, just 2 months ago. I think it was at, is that like the Strickland Dupasse card? No, it was on a fight night. Oh, Darren versus Evans. He was on the first card of the year. He's already back. He finished Ihor Potieria. It's pretty solid. And he also outstruck Yusri Belgarudi, who's he was Glory champion. I think he beat Pereira in one of his fights. Not gonna fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. And then beat some cans on LFA and another guy in the Contender Series. So pretty solid fighter. He's probably not gonna be great, but he looked good in his last fight. So I think he'll be better than Tresean Gore, like I said, one of the worst fighters in the UFC. Next fight up the card: Mudaerji versus Mitch Raposo. Raposo struggled a lot getting on the inside versus Andre Lima in his last fight, his only UFC fight, who, granted, is a much better fighter than Mudaerji, but Mudaerji is a lot bigger than Andre Lima, and he fights like really long. So the inability to get on the inside is going to be even greater for Raposo, I think, in this fight. Mudaerji is listed at 5'8", but I think he's actually taller. If you go watch the Matt Schnell fight, which is a great fight, just watch it anyways. The commentary, I think it was Paul Felder, was like, there's no way this guy is only 5'8". So I think he's actually probably like 5'10". And he also has, if he's 5'8", he has a 72-inch reach, which is the equivalent of being 6 foot. Usually people have the same reach as height in the way the UFC measures it. And his reach would be 4 inches greater than his height. So yeah, he has a 3-inch height advantage over Raposo and a 7-inch reach advantage. So he's got the size on him. It's going to be hard for Raposo to get on the inside. And Mudaerji was beating the shit out of Matt Schnell before he got finished. So I know he's on a losing streak, last 3 in a row. Charles Johnson, pretty solid fighter. Tim Elliott, perennial contender. I mean, not contender, but like perennial gatekeeper, I guess. Perennial ranked number 10 guy. I think he's been ranked number 10 since 2010. Matt Schnell, he's winning that fight, and then he went on to get finished. And he got finished because he got out-grappled, which, I'm a little concerned. Is Raposo going to be able to implement the grappling kind of how Matt Schnell was able to? But then you think about it, like, if he has a similar fight to Matt Schnell, he's probably just going to get finished. Like, Matt Schnell got beat up. He was getting, like, 10-8'd before he got the finish. Raposo's a pretty solid grappler, but much smaller. It's going to be hard to get on the inside, and Mudaerji is a really good scrambler. And he's really long, so he's going to be able to, like, kick off the cage, and just kind of get out of these positions, and I think that's going to prevent him from getting, like, just manhandled and out-grappled. And then a lot of the places where Lima was having success against Raposo, like the leg kicks and, like, the punches on the outside, Mudaerji was doing really well against Schnell, and has done really well in his UFC career. So, God, he hasn't won in 4 years, huh? Still, I think he's the better fighter. And he was, whooping Schnell. Like, it can't be overstated, like, how much he was beating Schnell before he got finished. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Mudaerji. I just think he's pretty solid. He's been improving. I'm sure Raposo's going to improve, too. He's pretty young. I just think they're just probably the better fighter as of today, especially when you come at it with his size. Michal Oleksiejczuk versus Sedriques Dumas. Sedriques Dumas, again, one of the top 10 worst fighters in the UFC. He beat, his wins are Cody Burnage, who sucks, Abu Azaitar, who sucks, and Dennis Tulio, who sucks. Like, literally, like, the middleweights I've mentioned so far, Brundage, Azaitar, Tulio, Tresean Gore, Cody Brundage, Josh Fremd, and Antonio Tricoli might be, like, bottom to top of the worst middleweights in the UFC. I might have just read all of them. Maybe I'm missing a few, but, like, they all suck. Which is rough. And then Michal Oleksiejczuk, not the best either. But Michal Oleksiejczuk's got pretty solid reach. He's got he doesn't have reach advantage, but he's got really long arms. He looks kind of strange. I think 74 inches is wrong, but and he's got a lot of power, and that's how Sedriques Dumas got KO'd by Ruziboev. Now, he did get eye poked and was looking away, but he just got hit with, like, a right hand. That's his uppercut. It was like a straight right on the outside, and got dropped and finished. And that's also how Oleksiejczuk caught and dropped Kevin Holland, and that's how he finished Julian Nishkwani. Actually, no, that was roundabout. Whatever. He did that against Julian Nishkwani, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I'm just gonna pick Oleksiejczuk. Sedriques Dumas has, like, nothing off his back. He's got nothing impressive on the feet. He doesn't have good wrestling. Like, his wins are, I don't even remember the Burnage fight. I don't even remember the Tulio fight, which is maybe he wrestled him. I don't even remember. But I remember the Azaitar fight was on UFC 294 or whatever the Volk Islam 2 card was. And he just kind of stood on the outside and, like, did nothing and won the fight. And I don't think that's going to work against a guy like Oleksiejczuk, who's dangerous and, like, will walk down for a finish. Yeah, not the best run of things, but he beat Cody Brundage to finish him in the first round instead of winning a decision. Finished Sam Alvey. Lost to Dustin Jacoby, which hasn't aged the best, but beat Shamil Gamzatov, beat Pukauskis. I mean, these are kind of a while ago, but decent wins. Like, he finished Jean Vellante before Vellante became heavyweight. He finished Gej Murad Antigulov, who isn't that good. That guy lost to Paul Craig by a triangle. But he's looked pretty solid. So he also had a no contest against Khalil Roundtree. Why was this? Oleksiejczuk failed the drug test. All right, that's good. So he's probably using steroids. Yeah, I just think, I don't know. These guys both suck. Oleksiejczuk is a little better. Almost beat Kevin Holland, I guess. Yeah, Sedriques Dumas is pretty garbage. Next fight off the card. Jeez, it's not getting much better. Julian Erosa versus Darren Elkins. I actually think Erosa's pretty solid. If you want to just look at Elkins' resume, he loses to pretty much anyone decent that he fights. His, I think, 6 most recent losses are Jonathan Pierce, Cubby Swanson, Nate Landwehr, Ryan Hall, Ricardo Lamas, and then Alexander Volkanovski. Obviously, a couple of those guys pretty solid, but like Ryan Hall, not the best. Landwehr, not the most technical guy. Cub Swanson, past his prime. JSP, just like a kind of a contender. Lamas, again, like not the best guy. And his recent wins are against Daniel Pineda, TJ Brown, Tristan Connolly, Derek Minner, and Eduardo Gagagori, who all suck. And Elkins is just like kind of washed. Like, he was never that good. He was never like a great fighter, and then now he's 40. Had a good performance in his last fight not that long ago, I guess, but wasn't that impressive. It was against kind of a bum. You look at Erosa, he actually has like pretty good performances against pretty good fighters. He has round 1 submissions against Christian Rodriguez and Ricardo Ramos. He has decisions over Hakeem Dawodu and Steven Peterson. He finished Charles Jourdain. He finished Nate Landwehr, Sean Woodson, Jamal Emmers. So those are pretty good performances. Forever ago, I think like 2016, he got robbed against Paddy Pimblett. If you ever watch the interview with Paddy Pimblett where he does the post-fight interview and then the camera pans away at like he zooms out and he just vomits blood, that was against Julian Erosa. And he won like a unanimous decision, but he pretty clearly lost that fight. Like, he was getting beat up to the body. It's very similar to the Jared Gordon fight where he was just like walking in with no defensive limbs, and just getting whooped, like just getting outstruck. Yeah, Julian Erosa, pretty solid fighter. Elkins, usually his advantage is he's really experienced, but Erosa has more fights than Elkins. He's 30-11, and Elkins is 29-11, so he has an extra fight over him. He's younger, so he has like less, years, I guess, but he has more fights. He's also bigger, more reach, probably a better fighter technically too. He's not the damage, so he's not gonna like, thug out like getting whooped maybe as much as Elkins would, but I think he's just a better fighter. So I'm gonna pick him. Next fight up the card: Chase Hooper versus Jim Miller. Take a swig of water real quick. So Chase Hooper's been on a really good run recently, and I think that's why he's such a big favorite, minus 700. And I don't know if I totally agree with those odds. If you look at who he's fought recently, fought Clay Guida, who again is like old past his prime. Vyacheslav Borshev, who good striker but not the best finisher, not a very good grappler. He kind of got caught in that fight, and then it was downhill from that on. Beat Jordan Levitt, but Jordan Levitt's also kind of one-dimensional, and Hooper was just a better grappler. And then beat Nick Fior. Not the best fighter, couldn't finish him, won by decision. So I don't, love those performances. And if you look at how he lost before this recent run he's been on, he lost to Steve Garcia. Garcia just kind of beat him up, and finished him. And then Steven Peterson, kind of a similar thing, didn't get the finish, but just beat him up on the feet. Alex Caceres, kind of a similar thing, just beat him up on the feet. So fighters who he doesn't have like isn't able to like get things going early with his grappling. He was, getting beat up, and Jim Miller's like started out some pop. Like, if you look at his fight against who is it, Jesse Butler, who is a bum, he did just like get on the inside and knock him out. But I think he can totally do that against Hooper. So I don't know why Hooper's such a big favorite. What was I gonna say? Yeah, he's looked really good in the grappling, and Jim Miller is like a good grappler, but not a great grappler, similar to Clay Guida and Jordan Levitt. They're both like really good. They're all the people I just mentioned are really good grapplers, but Chase Hooper just kind of has like that. The way he's been fighting recently, he's been insane with his grappling. Just really good transitions from the back to mount, really good at passing guard, and he's been implementing his wrestling well. So I think if this fight goes to grappling, he's going to have like a clear advantage. He's also really young, so he's probably improved more. I just think that it's very possible that he's going to get finished on the feet. And the only reason I'm picking him to not get finished on the feet is because against Bobby Green, who's a similar size to Chase Hooper, Jim Miller really struggled to get on the inside, and he just got beat up with jabs. And I don't think Hooper's going to do that. I don't think he's going to use head movement and jabs to keep Miller on the outside. But I think that if you're going to struggle just in general to get on the inside against anyone, you're probably not going to very easily get on the inside against Hooper without getting taken down or involved in some sort of grappling exchange. So I think that Hooper will just take it to the grappling, find his submissions, find his ground and pound, find his good work, and Hooper also doesn't just get put away right away. Like, Steve Garcia had to do a lot of damage before he finished him, and he was able to survive against Caceres and Steve Peterson. So I don't think that Jimmo is just going to find his shin and knock him out. He's never been like colded before. So even if he does get hurt, I think he'll be able to survive and just do work with his grappling, like I said before. All right, next fight of the card, another kind of, I don't want to say similar fight, but another very good grappler, Virna Jandiroba versus Xiaonan. I'm going to pick Virna Jandiroba, however you pronounce her name, because Xiaonan isn't very good or like active on the feet, especially if you look at her last fight. Like, she didn't really do shit. She was just slightly better. And Jandiroba has outgrappled pretty much everyone she's fought in the last 3 years. In the Hailey fight, Xiaonan gave up her neck and her back in the first round and basically got choked unconscious. But like the bell rang, so she got basically choked unconscious with the second left and got like woken up as the round ended, and then went on to have like a pretty decent fight. But in the grappling, she just had like she was never able to get what she wanted to do. She got whooped on the grappling basically against Hailey, and Virna Jandiroba, I would say her name, has much better jiu-jitsu than Hailey, and I think she's improved her wrestling pretty significantly in this like little run she's been going on. So I think that if the fight gets to the grappling, which she should be able to get it to be there, God, I can't fucking talk. She'll probably have success and maybe get a submission, but I think probably just a decision. If you want to see how she's improved her grappling, look at how Darren fought Lemos, just kind of winging punches and going crazy just to try to get like in the clinch to like do a head and arm throw or pull guard or whatever. Versus how Jandiroba was able to just like get in on a single leg, take her down, hold her down, and get a submission. Xiaonan also had a very close fight with Mackenzie Dern. I think I was just fucking staring at Mackenzie Dern's ass the whole fight, but it was arguably a draw. And Mackenzie Dern has much worse wrestling than Virna Jandiroba, and Mackenzie Dern was able to, especially in that fifth round, just like get a really good position on Xiaonan and arguably get a draw. So I know that this fight's 3 rounds and that fight was 5 rounds, and it took Darren forever to get that position, but Jandiroba is a much better wrestler than Darren, and was able to do it against Lemos, where Darren wasn't able to. Also, why did she take so much time off? She hasn't fought 8 months when she took no damage in her last fight. A little dumb. I don't know. Maybe, actually, I think she had fights planned and got canceled. Check. Who cares? It's fucking, she had a fight against Tatiana Suarez that got canceled. Who cares? It's fucking Virna Jandiroba. Next fight of the card, pretty exciting fight, Danny Yair versus Sean Woodson. I'm going to pick Danny Yair, and here's why. Woodson made a very close striking match with Alex Caceres, Charles Jourdain, and Luis Saldana. Like, Luis Saldana would have probably won that fight if he didn't throw an illegal, was it a knee or kick? And then, like, go celebrate thinking he won. And that fight was a draw. And then Jourdain and Caceres, a lot of people thought that Jourdain and Caceres both beat Sean Woodson. And I think all of those guys are significant, maybe not significantly, but much worse strikers than Danny Yair. If you look at EA's fights against Philly, Landwehr, and Damon Jackson, he was able to get on the inside against the 3 of them really easily, or not easily, but like very well, and finish 2 of them with hooks, Philly and Damon Jackson. And I think that's more likely. So he's able to get on the inside. Sean Woodson's tall. You want to get on the inside against tall guys, tall, rangy guys. And Ige is really good on the inside if he gets there. And in the fights with Jourdain and Caceres, Woodson was winning the outside battle, but he would like slightly lose the like extended exchanges, which is why a lot of people think he lost, because those are like the big moments. He was losing those. But Jourdain and Caceres aren't very good at like inside exchanges. Like, they're not the best boxers. You don't see a lot of like left hook KOs from Caceres and Jourdain, but you do see it from Danny Yair. So I think that he's probably going to lose the outside exchanges, or not the exchanges, but like the outside, tit for tat point fighting, similar to how Caceres and Jourdain lost. But I think that if he gets on the inside, which or I'll just say when he gets on the inside, because I think there will be boxing exchanges, I think he will have much more success than Caceres and Jourdain did, and he might be able to get a knockdown or a finish. But even if he doesn't, I think that in the way that Jordan and Caceres will be able to make it close, I think his skill advantage on the inside will make up the size disadvantage and the closeness that Jordan and Caceres had. Also, Ige is a pretty good grappler, so if that's an option against Woodson, I know he's got like a freak build, and his build probably helps him prevent grappling. But if that's an option against Woodson, I could see Ige implementing that. He's used He's used grappling against dangerous opponents before. Looked decent in the grappling against Murphy. Was able to neutralize Lopes with the grappling late in that fight. Arguably beat Bryce Mitchell with defensive wrestling. So yeah, I'm going to pick Danier to win that fight, whether it stays on the feet or it goes to the grappling. Alright, next fight up the card, Nikita Krylov versus Dominick Reyes. Now, I was originally going to pick Dominick Reyes. I was just going to be like, yeah, I want him to win, so I'm going to pick him. But I looked into it. I thought Krylov was much older. I know he's taken like a 2-year layoff, and since then, he's become a Russian. Like his region in the Ukraine has now become like I don't know if it's like Russian territory, but now Krylov flies the Russian flag. But he's actually still pretty young. He's only 32, and he's younger than Reyes. And, you know, Reyes had a long layoff in his career, came back and won. So I'm picking Krylov because he's really dangerous on the feet, and he's really technical on the ground. He does leave himself open to get hit on the feet, but he hasn't been TKO'd in 12 years. So, yeah, I know Reyes has had this little comeback run where he beat Dustin Jacoby, and he beat Anthony Smith, but I don't think those are the best wins. I was impressed by his performance against Jacoby, but he kind of just like hit Jacoby when Jacoby had his hands down and finished him, which I guess is impressive. And I know Jacoby had good performances against fighters like Roundtree and Petrino and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't think he's at high level. I don't think he's nearly as good or dangerous as Krylov is. And I didn't like how Reyes looked before that moment. And then same as Anthony Smith, like in the first round, like Reyes really couldn't get anything going against Anthony Smith, and then Anthony Smith just dropped his hands and got caught with the combo. And then round two, I guess Reyes is more impressive. Smith just did his thing where he shot a takedown, failed it, and then sat in the turtle for 4 minutes and just got TKO in the round. So I hope Reyes wins, but I just don't think he's going to. Krylov is really dangerous on top. If you look at the fight against Paul Craig, I know we got drunk on that fight, but like just if you look at the ground and pound Krylov was doing, I think he put Craig out like a couple times, just with a couple shots. So really dangerous on the ground. He looked really good in like scrambles against Ryan Spann, who did KO Dominick Reyes. But if you watch that fight, it's about 4 minutes of scrambles, and then Krylov gets a submission. So yeah, really good kind of everywhere. If you watch Reyes, he's always kind of been, a not super technical guy with a good body kick and a good left hand. And that was enough to beat John Jones, and that was enough to have like a really good, first couple rounds against, first like round and a half versus Yair. But he's taken a lot of damage since then. He got finished by Blahovic. He got finished by Yair. He got finished by Spann. And he's come back, but I don't think he's nearly as good as he was before. He's just going to be more chinny, and he's not any more technical, So I'll pick Krylov, probably by finish, unfortunately. All right, next fight up the card, People's Main Event, they're calling it, Bryce Mitchell versus Gene Silva. So obviously, Gene Silva has looked really good on the feet. He's finished all 4 of his UFC opponents. He's got like this fighting nerds momentum. But the question is, he's fighting like a high-level grappler. How is that going to go? Well, most of the finishing strikes that Silva has landed in the UFC, you think of the Jordan uppercut, you think of a lot of the punches in the Weston Wilson finishing sequence. You think of the spinning elbow he landed against Dober. You think of the left hook right hand he landed against Bagassarian. These are all punches that have surprised the opponent by closing the distance really quickly, or like hitting the opponent in a position they don't think they're going to get hit by a big shot from. And if you look at Bryce Mitchell's fights against Ilya and his knockout against Emmett, most of the punches that Ilya lands that like will do the damage that lead up to the submission finish are like in this area where it's like breaking from a grappling exchange. And if you look at the overhand right from Emmett, he catches him in a range where he's not really, I mean, he's expecting maybe get hit there, but he closes the distance quickly in the same way that Gene Silva does, that Bryce Mitchell doesn't have time to like react. If you look at how he fought Ilya usually opens like gets into distance with boxing combos. So he like does shoulder fakes and hip fakes and then like slips the jab to try to get on the inside and land like hooks. He did that really well against Holloway and Volkanovski and Emmett. But Mitchell, as their fight lasted, he actually did a pretty good job at avoiding those punches, backing up and using head movement to like not get caught in a way that better fighters were able to do. However, when he tried to grapple, he put himself in that distance, and that was how Ilya was able to close the distance in their fight and get the damage off. So that's Gene Silva's expertise, kind of fighting in that range, at least from what we've seen in the UFC. And I'm also not like super sold. I know Mitchell's a great grappler, but I don't know what he's gonna do when he takes down Gene Silva. Like, he's had a pretty rough time finishing people in the grappling. His only finish in the grappling recently, he's had the twister finish, and then he had the Chrome Gracie slam. Those are his only two finishes in the UFC. And he doesn't really get a ton of damage off when he's in the grappling. Against Barboza and Philly, didn't do a ton of damage. And he arguably lost to Ige because he wouldn't get any good positions until later in the round. Like, I think at the end of round 1 and 2, he got mount, and then he was only like had time to land a couple punches or go for a submission. So he wasn't able to get a ton of damage off. It was hard to score those rounds for him. And I think that might be kind of similar in this fight. Also, Gene Silva showed a pretty good ability to get on the feet or get to the feet against Xiaonan. This is kind of how Prates fought Magny too, Silva's teammate. Whenever Magny would get Prates down, Magny would just get his hips out, get to his feet, limp leg, and like try to get against the cage and like get in the clinch and then break, which is exactly how Gene Silva did against Xiaonan. And I know Xiaonan isn't like the grappler that Mitchell is, but if Gene Silva does that too, that's pretty similar to how Ige was able to get up against Mitchell, especially out of the crackdown, which is like Mitchell's go-to thing. Like breaking away from the clinch like that is how Silva finished Xiaonan. And if he's able to do that against Mitchell, I think he'll be able to land a lot of good shots like in the break. Especially if Mitchell's more focused on like chain wrestling, or landing a kick after a break. If I was Mitchell, I would shoot for the takedown. If I get it, good. If he starts to get up, like break, cover up, and like back off. Because if he doesn't, like Xiaonan did, he's gonna get caught with a punch. And if he doesn't, like Dober did, he might get caught with a spinning elbow. So, yeah. Also, Vegas has Silva as a pretty big favorite, maybe a too big favorite. I think he opened as like a minus 400 favorite. He's still minus 300, and I fully disagree with that. Like, I think Mitchell could totally win. We don't know how good Silva's grappling is. Mitchell could just take him down and hold him down. But usually when it's a fight like, oh, this is a pick 'em, why does Vegas have someone as a huge favorite? They know more than we do, and the big favorite usually wins. So I'm just gonna pick Silva. I doubt Vegas is like, well, he's gonna win because of plot. What is it called? Plot armor. He's gonna win because he's a fighting nerd. For the lore, Vegas isn't gonna be thinking like that. They probably know something we don't. So yeah. Also, Gene Silva has a pretty similar build to Josh Emmett and Dan Ige. And I guess kind of Ilya, and those are like the fighters that had the most success against Bryce Mitchell. Like, usually it's like the lankier guys that he's able to take down and hold down. So, yeah. All right, next fight up the card, featured fight, Yair Rodriguez over Patricio Pitbull. Yeah, Pitbull's kind of past his prime. I think he's 39, 38, something like that. He's had some of the worst performances of his career recently. I didn't like the Sergio Pettis performance. I really don't think Sergio Pettis is the best fighter, especially to lose a decision to. Like, he's dangerous, but he got whooped on by Kyoji Horiguchi for like 20 minutes before he found like a random spinning back fist, and then he went on to lose the rematch. He also lost to Patchy Mix. And then like Kyoji Horiguchi, forgot to mention, is a former flyweight. Like, he fought Demetrius Johnson for the belt like 8 years ago. And Sergio Pettis is losing to him, and then Pitbull loses the decision to Sergio Pettis. Not the best look. Pretty sure Pitbull also got fucking colded by Chihiro Suzuki, who's a really good, like, dynamic striker, which, like, those are the kind of guys that get finishes, but really good dynamic striker. When I think of a really good dynamic striker in the UFC featherweight division, I'm thinking of Yair. Yeah, and then Chihiro recently lost to Kleber Koik at a Risen Decade, like the New Year's event. And he also lost to Karshiga Doubtbeck, I think last weekend or the weekend before, who I don't think is that good. Doubtbeck's like best win before Suzuki was Yaman, who's a kickboxer. He's a kickboxer, right? Pretty sure he is. So, like, I don't think Doubtbeck is UFC ranked level, and if a guy who just beat you is going to lose to him, I don't think you're UFC ranked level, I know that's not how MMA math works. Like, obviously, Doubtbeck was able to, like, neutralize the threat of Suzuki, and Pitbull wasn't. And also Suzuki probably won that fight. I don't know. I don't love that loss from Pitbull, especially when you consider, like, the strengths that Suzuki has are like, I think he's good and I think he's dangerous, but I think that Yair is also super dynamic and dangerous, and he lands at like a much higher clip than Suzuki, and he has a lot more weapons. Like, if you're gonna get chinned by Suzuki in the first round, you're gonna get lit up by Yair. So, yeah. Pitbull didn't look good against Kleber Koik, who's pretty one-dimensional. He's just a grappler. I know he won that fight, but it didn't look super impressive. Just stayed out of the grappling, didn't really engage in the feet. I get it, like, you don't want to get your guard pulled and then get submitted by a really good grappler, but that's the kind of guy you should be, like, beating up and finishing, Yeah. Yair's looked really good in his last 4 fights, especially like early in the fight. His last 2 losses are from getting out grappled later in the fight, both in 5-round fights. Now, I will say it did happen in the 3rd round, but it was in a 5-round fight. So I think if he gets an early lead on the feet, like how he did against Volk, Emmett, and Ortega, or the second Ortega fight, I don't think Pitbull has the finishing ability on the ground of Volk or Ortega to make up for this gap that Rodriguez will have. So, yeah, like, Yair's probably gonna light Pitbull up with kicks. He's much bigger. Maybe light him with punches in the 2nd round, do some good grappling, and then I think he's going to easily win rounds 1 and 2, and then have a rough round 3. But I don't think Pitbull's going to be able to finish in round 3 to make up for the gap and, like, steal a win. So, Yair is also significantly bigger than Pitbull, and like I said, the fight's only 3 rounds. He just needs to win 2 if he's going to win a decision. So it's not like a 5-round fight where he needs to, like, win 2, recover, and then, like, steal a late round, or get a finish to avoid, like, getting outworked in the last 3. So, yeah. Also, if you watch the Kleber Koik fight, one of the only entertaining moments of that fight is Kleber Koik teeps Pitbull in the face, and if you're getting teeped in the face by Kleber Koik, you're probably getting kicked in the face by Yair Rodriguez. So, yeah, co-main event. Next fight off the card. Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler. Okay, I wrote my it's now, I wrote this 12 hours ago. It's 3 p.m. now. I wrote this at 3 a.m. So I'm just going to read what I wrote. Hopefully it makes sense. I'm not going to try to, like, reword it. All right. I think Chandler's been super overrated in the UFC, only beating Dan Hooker, who's at a weird point in his career, and Tony Ferguson, who is in the middle of an 8-fight losing streak. Pimblett has had some bad performances, but is undefeated in the UFC. Obviously, there's the Jared Gordon fight, but on paper he's undefeated in the UFC, and he's looking improved fight to fight. Chandler has taken a lot of damage in his UFC career and is older than ever. I guess Paddy's also older than ever, but aren't we all? I don't know. Chandler's pretty old. He's like 38. Chandler's also given up his back multiple times in his last 2 fights, and he's been behind in most of his fights until he gets a finish in his wins, or until he loses in his losses. The chance Chandler has in this fight that everyone's giving him is chinning Paddy, obviously, who doesn't protect his chin super well. But Chandler hasn't chinned anyone with punches since the Hooker fight. That was 5 years ago, and since that fight, he's only been in wars. So if you're gonna chin someone in a fight, it's gonna be in the kind of fight he had against Gaethje, and the kind of fight he had against Poirier, and the first Oliveira fight, and he hasn't knocked anyone out with punches yet. So, like, why would I think he's going to do it to Pimblett? He did find Oliveira's chin in their most recent fight, but Oliveira does get hit a lot in most of his fights, and he's pretty chinny, and that was Chandler's only moment in their fight. So if a similar outcome plays out for Paddy gets hit about the same amount as Oliveira does. Oliveira is much more chinny than Paddy. Like, Paddy takes a lot of damage, and if Oliveira is going to get dropped once and survive and go on to win the fight by decision, I don't understand why Pimblett wouldn't either. Like, Pimblett gets hit a lot, but he's not super chinny. He can take punches. Yeah. Paddy's also had underrated success in the feet in his last 2 fights. I know he looks like shit, but so does Duplessis. And Duplessis outstruck Strickland twice. He outstruck, Whitaker and Adesanya. And I know it's middleweight, but I don't know. I think Paddy's he does look like shit, but he has had success. He did drop Ferguson, landed a good combo on him, landed a flying knee, and Ferguson dropped Chandler. So, yeah. Obviously, Paddy's also really good in the grappling, and I think that's the main difference between him and Charles in this fight. Like, 5 more Michael Chandler fight. Michael Chandler's probably not going to be determining the pace, similar to the Oliveira fight. And I think if Paddy wants to win and get the same opportunities that Charles did, he's going to have to fight a similar fight. He's going to have to back Chandler up against the cage, go second in the striking. But I think if he does, he's much more likely to take risks than Oliveira, and therefore much more likely to find a finish. I think if Oliveira opened up with combos on the feet rather than just singular strikes as counters, I think if he, went for submissions more than position and damage, he probably would have found a finish. Like, there's points in the fight where Oliveira would, especially in the first round, he'd get a takedown and then he ended up in a weird, side control leg lock position. Like, it's kind of hard to explain, but he was like, I'll just sit here because Chandler can't really move, and I'll just hit him with a couple of hammer fists and take the round. But I think if Pimblett got in a similar situation, he would go for try to get him out from that position, or maybe roll for a leg lock or go for a submission or something like that. And then later in the fight, Oliveira would get mount, and he would just hold on to mount, land a couple 12 to 6 elbows, rather than going for a triangle or going for an arm bar, or going for an arm triangle or something like that. And then also, Oliveira got his back twice in that fight, and only really went for the rear naked choke. Again, just kind of accepted, I'm going to win the round if I stay here, so I'm going to stay here. And I think Pimblett would go for an arm bar, would go for a reverse triangle, or go for, mount. I don't think he's going to, accept a position and be like, okay, I've won this. Because I think in the back of his mind, he's like, if I survive this round and win this, that's a bigger chance that I'm going to get knocked down the next round. So, I think Pimblett will go for it if he gets a good position. I think he should go for it on the feet if his coach, if that, I don't know his game plan, but if I was his coach, I'd be like, hey, if you can back him down like Oliveira did, wait for him to throw his big punches and then throw a combination. He had no response. He just ran away when Oliveira started opening up. So I think that's what he should do. Just open up with combinations against cage and go for submissions when he gets on the ground, because there was 0 points in that fight where Chandler reversed the position and then landed big shots from on top. The only time when he had success in that entire fight was when he landed 1 punch in the 5th round and landed a bunch of back of that shots. So if Pimblett knows what's good for him, he'll go for it, because Chandler was not able to get the grappling going at all in that fight. And I know Oliveira's a great grappler, but so is Pimblett. I think Pimblett's really underrated. When he came to the UFC in Cage Warriors, he was just a grappler. He had some good knockouts against, Cage Warrior schlups, but he was just he's flying triangles and reverse triangles, shit like that. He's a really good grappler, especially off his back. So I think he should grapple. Hot take. All right, next fight off the card. I want to have a swig of water. All right, main event, featherweight championship for the vacant belt. Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. I don't have a ton of words to say about this fight. I feel like it's kind of easy to pick. So I think the one option is Lopes is just going to chin Volk in the first couple rounds. But I'm going to pick the other option, which is where you look at Lopes. His danger on the feet significantly fades after the first couple rounds. In the Berto fight, the Ige fight, and the Evloev fight, And then also Lopes struggles a lot with fighters who sit in his guard and throw punches. You look at the third round of the Ige fight, you look at most of the Evloev fight, and that's kind of where Volk has a lot of his success against dangerous fighters. In the Yair fight, he lost the first 2 rounds, ended up taking Yair down, getting in a posture position and just landing big punches. The Ortega fight, anytime the Ortega fight was in the grappling, other than Ortega's guillotine and Ortega's triangle, Volk was just in his guard, postured up, landing big punches. That's how he stole around where he got triangled. A lot of people are talking about, like, if most fighters, when they just get stuck in a deep submission, like a triangle like that, they would just accept the lost round, not risk getting, caught another one. But as soon as Volk got out of the triangle, he postured up, landed a bunch of ground and pound shots, and stole around back. And then also in the Jeremy Kennedy fight, kind of did a similar thing. Volkanovski also has a lot of success using his jab on the feet and also the step-up lead low kicks to neutralize dangerous opponents. First round against Ilya, he did that a lot, just kind of circled away from his power, used the jab, stuck it in his face. And he also used the step-up lead low kick and the step-up lead body kick, which I hope to see more of. I was impressed by that in that fight. Another thing that it does, and I'll go into more examples, is this combination, not this combination, but like this technique of keeping the jab in their face, keeping the leg kicks on them, is it kind of saps them. Like, you got to be switched on the entire fight, and if you're switched on for 3 rounds of 10 striking and you're looking for this finish the whole time, it's going to gas you out a lot quicker than if you're just stalking a guy and like looking for punches when you get openings. Look at the first 2 rounds against Yair. Yair had a lot of success, but he had to remain switched on the whole time, and he kind of got sapped. And then going into the 3rd round, Volk knew, like, hey, this guy's taking a lot of energy out just getting jabbed by me and countering with kicks. I can wrestle him and I can take him down and beat him up, and that's what he did. You look at all 3 of the hallway fights, especially the 3rd fight, Volk uses that jab a ton, and those leg kicks a ton, and it keeps Holloway switched on. Holloway can't back up and reset and find his new setup. And if you look at what Holloway did against Gaethje, Holloway fought that fight in his terms he made, so Gaethje had to be switched on the whole time, similar to how Volk did to him. So Gaethje couldn't reset, and that's where Holloway got his success. And he kind of took that from Volk. You look at the Korean Zombie fight. I mean, Volk was just lighting up Korean Zombie with combos set up from the jab while he's circling and the step-up lead low kick. And the first Islam Makhachev fight, Islam took a lot out of Volk. Volk took a lot out of Islam. Oh, they both did to each other. But in the first fight, Volk used the simple the jab and the step-up lead low kick to take a lot out of Islam, win a lot of the exchanges on the feet, and then end up getting the grappling advantage in the 5th round, having success in the grappling, which no one's able to do against Islam. So I think this technique will allow him to survive the 1st round, maybe the 2nd round against Lopes, take a lot out of him, especially when you consider Lopes doesn't move his head a lot. He doesn't have a lot of good, like the reason why Ilya had success against Volk is because Ilya slips his head left and right a lot, and then throws over the jab, which you want to do against a guy who's going to jab a lot. But Lopes kind of does throw over the jab. He did against Ortega, but he doesn't have a lot of head movement, and I can see him slowing down and just eating 100 jabs in the later rounds. So I'm going to pick Volkanovski to win this fight. I think a lot of this fight's going to end up in Lopes' guard, with him getting punched in the body and hammer-fisted, similar to Ortega. I think a lot of this fight is going to look like round 1 against Ilya, where Ilya was trying to get in and land his big punches. It's just Volk was lighting him up too much and getting out. I am really worried about Volk getting chinned. I really hope he doesn't, but I think he's a better fighter. And again, I'm just trying to pick better fighters. There's also a very decent chance that Lopes is just a kind of a bum. He's not the most proven. Like, in the UFC, he's fought a lot of one-dimensional guys. Let me just check his record real quick. But fought Ortega, who's pretty one-dimensional. He fought EA on 2 hours' notice. He beat Sedriques Youssef with a knockout in the 1st round. You could argue that's a fluke. He beat Sabatini with a knockout in the 1st round. Sabatini's pretty one-dimensional. He beat Gavin Tucker. Gavin Tucker's kind of a bum. And he lost to Evloev. Like, that's his record in the UFC. And then before the UFC, he went to a split decision with 8-3 Nate Richardson. Lost to Drew Anderson Verdot. on the Contender Series. Fought a bunch of fucking schlups on Lux Fight League, which is not the best, what do you call it, like regional promotion. Lost to Amir Elzukayev. I don't know how to pronounce it. I guess these fights are kind of a while ago, but he isn't very proven. Like, he could just be a bum. I would say he kind of got an easy run to the title. Obviously, he had to fight Evloev in his debut. That was tough. But he lost that fight and then went on to win 5 and get a title shot. So, yeah. Also hasn't gotten a finish on his last 2 fights against, the 2 best opponents he's fought. So, what does that say? All right. Those are my picks. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Comment. Like the video if you enjoyed listening. Subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Links in the description. That is all. Thank you for listening.